stuff that I'm reading right now talks a lot about how people are changing jobs after this COVID stuff has gone on. What are you seeing in the market right now that maybe that some of us, the lay people who just read the news, aren't seeing?
There is a lot of activity, and I think part of it is just because of the pandemic results of people being locked in and out of control in their careers and their lives. So as things are starting to open up, it's just like a big breath of fresh air. So we are seeing a lot of candidates looking at new opportunities, but they're also kicking tires, and some of those jumps aren't always just because the perception is the grass is greener. They're jumping without thinking much about it, and it's a good thing and bad thing. We love the activity, but unfortunately, I'm afraid that it might lead to more turnover a year or so down the line.
Interesting. Yeah. See, once again, I would not have thought of that because I just think of people that I know that have been unhappy for years in their job and are taking this chance to go look somewhere else. So it's almost just like more volume of what you normally see, maybe.
It's definitely. I mean, for instance, the nature of our business, we might bring in 5 to 10 new contracts a month that we look at. We're getting 5 to 10 new contracts a week right now. So it's employers are looking, but also candidates are, especially in certain skill sets, are just, we can't grow them fast enough. There's so much demand and not enough people to support the roles. So I think it's an interesting time. It's very similar to what I saw in the late 90s with the .com surge, where people were starting websites and no one had a ROI or what was their marketing plan. They just was flying. And it's the same feel where everyone's going at full tilt. And it's exciting and exhausting, but it'll be interesting to see if it's sustainable.
Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of people that are thinking about changing, kicking tires. We got a whole bunch of people that actually want to change. They see this as their chance. And then, on top of that, you're saying there's a bunch of new stuff coming in where they can't even find people to fill the void. So what would you say right now, if you're someone who's looking for a job, is the biggest issue that you're going to run into? Like, what do they need to know?
I think the biggest thing for a candidate or talent looking for work is you need to have a very clear vision of where you're at in your career and what you want. You will find people who want to hire you quickly, and there's a little bit of an ego thing there because everyone wants to be loved and liked, and you may look at something that looks shiny and nice on the outside, but you get inside, you don't really know the organization. So the more clarity you have in what's important to you, where you want to go, what you want to make, I think it will help make your decision the right one, not just a knee-jerk reaction. So that includes everything from your resume to if you want a remote role, which was a nice to have before, and it's become a standard, locked in, will always be here moving forward, remote opportunities. Or if you want to reload, because quite honestly, there was a huge mass exodus from some major markets where they are paying ridiculous salaries to get people back. So it's an opportunity, but the clearer you are in what is important to you and your family and your individual needs, the better your result's going to be.
So do you think there's a big gap there as far as people knowing how to do that and express that?
Yes, I do. They don't take the time. And again, as we've had 14 months to do some soul searching, but we had other things occupying our time other than career soul searching. So I think you have to take that step, because part of the anxiety in making a change is, okay, now I can do this. There's a lot of, the reality is there's a lot of employers looking to hire. That's a fact. In all industries, and even tourism and hospitality are starting to come back. But some of the needs are to stop the bloodletting, or they have clients, but they don't have people to support the clients. Agencies are surging, corporations are surging. So it's kind of just take a pause, step back. And this is the one thing the individual can control is be really clear of where you want to go. But also, when you start the process, what do you want to know about the organization when you're doing the interview or the Zoom interviews? And also when it's safe for you to go back in the office when you're comfortable, not what they want.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a lot of factors. That sounds a little intimidating, actually. The
Welcome to my world.
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking as someone who has been in a job search position in the past to go, it's hard enough to go, where do I want to work? I'm not exactly sure, and which position is going to be right for me. But then have all the remote stuff on top of it, and your eyes get bigger than your stomach. It sounds like in this position,
That's
or
exactly,
can.
that's exactly right. And it's an important decision. And there have been hires in the virtual world where people have never met their supervisor. They've never walked into the office. And there are good and bad things in that. But for some people who want to have a sense of control, you're going on faith in many ways of how you feel about the organization, what they represent, because you can't substantiate it by walking through the door and seeing it firsthand.
Yeah. There's just so many things you don't think about in this kind of brave new world, if you will. When we think about like wanting to be in person with people, but you forget even from an interview standpoint, right? Like there's certain things that you can pick up on both sides in person that aren't always perceptible on Zoom.
That's exactly right.
So how are you seeing people succeed despite this stuff going on?
I think, and again, a little selfish plug, working with a recruiter is really important because we've navigated this with other candidates. And I think getting those cheat sheets from a partner in the process who helps make you look good and helps comfort you and answer those questions is really important. And it doesn't always have to be a search firm. We're here for that, but you've got to have someone, whether it's a family member or friends, who can offer suggestions who've already been through it. I think it's a big step. So I think the successful candidates who've gone through it, they come prepared, or they have someone to help them get prepared. They know what they want to accomplish, and then they also just have to give up some of the things that they would like to have and really weigh what's most important. So is it the salary? Is it the client focus? Or is it working on something online or a new technology that's emerging? I think all those factors really will determine success. I will say this, of all the people we placed in the last year, and we've done quite a few who've done all the interviews via video and phone, they're still sticking. They haven't bounced. They're not looking anywhere else. So it does work, but it's a scary process. To your point, it's a little scary without someone holding your hand through it.
Totally. Shandor, good to see you today. Looks like Gaurav, thanks for joining us, says how to increase the networking in this online mode. All right, so you're looking for a job. I know me personally, I feel like this is something, tell me if I'm wrong, a lot of times it's who you know that can get you into those conversations, not just applications, right?
That's right.
How can, to Gaurav's point, how can we network in a way that's really helpful?
There are a couple of ways that I recommend, and I'm a big believer in LinkedIn. It's a great tool, and for career search, about 90 to 95% of recruiters use it to find talent. So you've got to be there and be visible. But other than your network, they're the networks you don't think about. So your past coworkers, the people who live in your community, the civic leaders, all of them, your alumni, all of those where we may think we've passed years ago, circle back, because it's a rich resource. So expanding your network through the people you've met, the journeys you've taken, and connect. You've got nothing to lose by connecting with them. But if they're connected to your next employer, you need to have that pathway. The other thing is LinkedIn is a great resource for groups where you can search by particular topics of what's important to you when you've determined your career path. They've also opened it up where you can join a variety of groups. It used to restrict to a max of 50, but join the groups where the conversations are being held, whether it's by skill set, by geographic region, or maybe it's by a particular company. Join their group, sit on it like a fly on the wall and watch the conversations. And then connect with them, connect with the most senior level executives you can. Especially if you're early in your career, people who are at the top of the ladder really like to see and be reminded of their process and getting there. So they will connect. They may not spend a lot of time, but they will definitely associate with you. So it's widen the net. Don't go just with people in a particular skill set or only the ones you've worked with, but really reach as far and wide as you can.
That's great. That's great. I have a friend who moved and wants to come back to Texas. And one of the pieces of advice I gave him, just because I probably have known you and some other people like you for a long time, who are the companies you want to work for? If you could make a list and then go scour your network, who do you know that has a cousin that works there, a mom, a friend, and just say, hey, I'm looking to move back in. Who can I talk to?
That's right. The other thing I think that's also important is you got to play the game. LinkedIn, the more you connect with, the better bells and whistles you have when it's all said and done. It's their algorithm. I'm now close to 12,000 first degree connections, and I promise you I have much more opportunities to reach high level individuals than I did when it was at 500. So you've got to play the game. You've got to connect. And I'm not necessarily saying you connect with everyone. You still have to use a certain level of discernment because it is the company you keep and who do you know, whether it's perceived you know them or not. But you want to be careful. But the other thing is in the live feed that all of us have every day and the people we know who are sharing articles, click on those likes, share, offer comments. It also creates an energy that is associated with you. And people see that. So participate. Don't just connect and do nothing. Participate in the profile and you'll get great results from it.
Yep. Love it. Love it. One of the things that we talk about is creating your own thought leadership. That way, when people come see you, they don't just see a profile. They actually see how you think and how you would execute on problems that they would hire you to execute on, right?
Right.
So how much of that have you encouraged people to do?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, well, it depends on the role too. I'll qualify this.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a creative, some like really good copywriters that I know are really, they're not the type to be always on social media. There's plenty of those out there, but I think use it for its purposes. At the very least, you need to have your portfolio if you're a creative. They give you free space. I mean, take advantage of it.
Yep.
But I think the other thing is LinkedIn is one vehicle. When I'm looking at a candidate or a client before I work with them, I'm going to look at all their social media. So I'll check their Twitter feed, who's following them, what they're replying to, what they're liking and sharing. I will check their Facebook in addition to their LinkedIn, because what LinkedIn tells us what business connections you have that might be relevant, who you know that I know or my client knows or similar firms. What Twitter tells me is how you communicate, what you share, what you're passionate about. Facebook tells me the down and dirty of really, it's everything from what are your core beliefs, what circles do you travel socially and personally? And again, I've got better things to do than really just troll individual profiles, but I'll get a glance real quick. Is this an outspoken activist? Is this an antisocial individual? Or is this someone it's all about partying? And again, I see that more junior level candidates, but it tells me about your character. So it's character, work profile, and how you communicate.
Yep, that's great. That's great. Cool. So now let's flip it up. What about people here who are employers? What are you seeing as the biggest issue that they're having to deal with right now?
I think that many of them, as much as they say they're ready, they're not ready. And I think things that are infecting employers today is the assumption of what we did prior to the pandemic will work for us just fine today, and it just won't. Candidates are really wanting everything, and then they're not willing to give up much from their perspective. So for instance, we talked about remote being, it's here to stay, it's not going away. You have to consider, for the right talent, is this a role that could be done remotely, and maybe they come into the office once a quarter or once a month or maybe never? Is that a role that could be supported that way? The other thing is benefits are table stakes. So employers who come to me and say, well, we pay 50% of the benefits, that's not good enough anymore. There are employers who are paying 100% for the employee and their family. There's also unlimited vacation and PTO. So it becomes, if you can't pay more salary, what can you provide?
Right.
And that really, is beyond table stakes. So we're seeing bonuses with corporations go way up. So what used to be 10 to 20%, I'm seeing 40 and 50% on certain roles. I'm seeing new business incentives, but the basic benefits of vacation and health and vision, you have to contribute or you're not even going to get their attention. And the other side is, I think for employers who don't want to be backfilling roles, take care of your core. If actually you should have already done it, but you've got to take care of your core team today. And that means candid conversations, letting them know they're valued and they're important. And if necessary, don't wait to give them that raise for their anniversary. Give it to them now, because they will be targeted. And I promise you, they're going to entertain ideas if you don't make it very clear they're too important to your organization and they have a place to grow.
I see it going on all around me. Some of my own friends. In fact, I've seen that in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I've been reached out to by recruiters asking if I'm happy. So it's out there. It's happening for sure. Okay, so they're having to deal with bringing more to the table, listening maybe a little bit more to what employees always wanted to keep the good talent. So, I mean, has this really just kind of raised the conversations that were always bubbling under the surface? Is that a fair statement?
I think that is, yes. So I think from my perspective as a person who places talent for 25 to 30 years now, I've always been yelling at the top of my lungs, your talent is your company. And if you don't take care of your talent, you have no company for sustainability. Yeah. I think it's there's always been a flip on who's got the louder voice, whether it's the employee or the candidate. So we talk about an employer's market versus a candidate's market. Right now, it's gone from such an extreme that it is a hyper candidate market, and the rules are all out the window. So it used to be thought unheard of to ask for 4 weeks vacation if you're a relatively junior employee. No longer an unheard of thought anymore. It's a matter of why and what would you use it for. But I think you have to be open, and you have to really ask the questions from a financial standpoint as a business leader. What's our return here? We also have seen, there are two things I want to make sure, and pull me back, you need to pull me back, but there are two things. I think one of the things that I've noticed is with the remote employee concept, I've seen large agencies who had maybe 5 major hubs in the US that now when I speak to them, they say we've gone from 5 hubs to 3,000 hubs, because wherever our employees are, we have an office, we have a footprint, and their work has not missed a beat. They haven't lost anything. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves moving forward. The other is, we talked about the candidates and the targeting, but there's also mergers and acquisitions going on with corporations, big time. We just saw that with Amazon and MGM this week, but there's a lot more behind the scenes that you don't see yet. What that's going to do is affect a stable organization becomes unstable the minute it's acquired, or after an acquisition, there's a redundancy of staff, and they're going to be doing some right sizing. So the whole sense of safety and security for a candidate and an employer really are not existing right now. So as everyone's jumping, we're all jumping, and it's like walking across the lava pit where you're walking across the stones, because you don't know which is going to be really hot and which is already cooled down. So you have to be measured steps.
Yeah. I was getting the idea of being on a ship in a storm that was kind of pushing you back and forth as you were walking, so man, that's a lot, Larry. I apparently I need to buy you some food or get you a nap coupon or something, because that's a lot going on.
It's exciting too. I mean, for those of us who are really love what we do, and dealing with talent and dealing with challenges, the truth is we solve problems. That's what we do as recruiters. We have a pain point from a client, we take care of the pain and get the right person to support it. But it's a lot of moving pieces. So we get, honestly, as long as I've been doing this, guess what? I've never been through a pandemic, especially global in scope, that affected not just regional and local, but also their clients abroad. So it's going to be an interesting process on how it rolls out, and it's going to be constantly changing. There's not going to be a norm for quite a while.
Yeah, and when you think of the way that you described a employer versus an employee market, makes me think of the real estate market right now, like super heavy, seller's market. Everyone can sell anything right now. Kind of same idea as it tilts in one direction, right?
Exactly. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. I had a home in Plano for over 30 years. I'm getting offers in the mail, written offers, not marketing materials. It's written offers. I've had the calls and the texts, but I mean, they're so desperate to buy new properties. I've never seen anything like that, and I think that's what we're going to see in the career space as well.
I was wondering, that was you telegraphed where I was going with that. So how long, a lot of people think the real estate market is about to make a change at some point here pretty soon, such the sellers market. How long do you think this employee heavy market's going to be in place?
At least 18 months. I think 18 months to 24 months. I don't see it slowing down. And again, what will dictate that is at some point we'll reach a critical mass where salaries, during the pandemic, the salaries did not go up. They held firm, but they also didn't go down. Mm-hmm. So that was one of those things where we're watching. There was a pandemic forced recession, but I think the challenge is, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I've started reading that comments here.
Sorry.
That's all right. So I think from the status, what's going to be the catalyst that changes it is we're going to reach that critical mass when salaries become too expensive for companies to afford. Mm-hmm. And then they have to decide, who are we now? What do we want to do? And do we want to sell off a piece of our business? They have to find funding and profitability for a variety of channels. And salary becomes the biggest expense. The other thing is office space, which truthfully, that's changed everything too, because you're seeing, we have an office in New York and I love our space in New York, but our building is now 10% occupied. So it's become no longer a necessity. And honestly, that's a huge expense that's gone away. Yeah. So I think you're going to see employers for now put it into salaries, maybe into their perks, which there's a few of those who'll be doing that. Sure. But I think it's going to be kind of like the shell game of where that nut is actually going to end up and who's going to have that benefit. And it's exciting and exhausting at the same time, but that's one of the things. One of the questions I just saw, the passion it comes down to, at the end of the day, I do what I do because I make an impact in people's lives. And for me, there's nothing more exciting. Even though when it's exhausting, it's still exciting. So either the bucket list items for those people considering retirement at some point, paying for the kids' education, buying that first home, when we can travel around the world, you can do that too. But that's why I do what I do. At the end of the day, I sleep really well because I know I'm having an impact. Mm-hmm. When I was a creative person doing package design at Frito-Lay, I love that too. It's very rewarding to see something you've done creatively in front of all consumers. That's exciting. But truthfully, the trade-off to helping an individual who wants to advance that next level or coach them through a difficult negotiation on an offer, I get a lot more joy out of that.
Yeah, that one-to-one, you can see it's a little bit, but I get it. It's a different type of joy, different type of excitement. So, well, so, I mean, one of the main things that, for what I work on is, from a business coach standpoint, is now you have to prove up your employees' worth. But if you're raising salaries, if you're offering more, you have to make sure that they're working on things that make the company money. What's that profit per employee? Like, do you know that?
And as we're competing for talent today, many employers are afraid to reevaluate their current staff because I get a comment of, well, I've got someone who's in this role and they make $150,000, so I can't afford to pay someone $165,000 to get them in the door. And I said, you can't afford not to. Yeah. I said, but what you've got to do is go and raise that salary of your other employee. You're creating a problem that doesn't exist. The truth is, if that person's that important to you, forget the $15,000. That person, if they leave, is going to cost you $40,000. So take care of them now. Yeah. So it's that, in a sense, is also affecting the parity on employee cost and benefits, because it will go up. It will go up. But I tell them, look what you're saving on travel and expenses and brick and mortar space that you don't have, which are your really big expenses. Yeah. The other is in the remote employee is we're seeing, because you've got people out of the country, salaries are no longer adjusted by market or region. I'm seeing this quite often. So if a candidate is looking at a job for an employer in New York, they're no longer adjusting that base salary range. They're paying what people make in New York. So regardless of the role where you're located, that's leveling out. And I think that's a huge advantage for candidates. But you're also seeing, if a client is in, nothing against Jackson, Mississippi, but Jackson, Mississippi isn't going to pay the same as Dallas or
Sure.
Chicago or New York.
Sure.
So that's a trade-off. It's the quality of life and that slower, casual community pace. Is that a better trade-off for you rather than the money?
Yeah, and I know I have seen stuff on the coast, particularly where they brought their salaries down because they can get talent from other markets now.
That's right.
Don't require, 225 just to live versus
right.
Dallas or wherever. So,
yeah.
Well, Larry, we are wrapping up here. So I just kind of want to end up and say, we appreciate having you on. Is there anything in particular that you would love to leave people with as we exit here?
I think do the soul searching. You've got to have the conversation with yourself and your family. What's important to you? What do you want? You can be selective right now, and you should be, but have those things mapped out, have those questions answered, and reach out to a recruiter. I mean, it doesn't cost a candidate anything to talk with us. Now, we may be slammed and you have to be patient,
right?
But I can tell you, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. When I'm up in the morning, I'm connected, and I love sharing ideas and advice. I may not be able to schedule a call, but I will send what I can. And if you do have skills that fit what I'm looking for, which all our positions are posted on our website, we'll set up a time. And it's, as you can tell, I'm pretty transparent. The goal is to help everyone win in this process, but know what's important to you. And I think that's the first step.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, how can you really do something you love and make an impact if you don't really know what you want to do? Awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to put your LinkedIn also in the comments over there. So everyone connect with Larry, because he's someone you're going to want to know at some point in your journey, in your career. If not for you, for your relatives, for your friends. I can tell you firsthand, he's fantastic to work with. So, and as you can see, running across the bottom, his website is challoner.com. Larry, is that the best way for people to reach you? Head to the website?
It is. I mean, LinkedIn is also really good.
Okay.
But if you go to Challoner, you'll go under the About section. You'll see more about my background as well as my great team. I have some amazing coworkers who bring just as much experience to the table.
Awesome. Very, very good. Well, Larry, thanks for being with us today, and we will see everyone next Friday, and check out this video. Until then.